Okay, so this is an example of a transportation problem. So transportation problem has to do with shipping goods. So basically at the basic level, it has to do with shipping goods from one set of places to another set of places. So here we have an example where we have the company that makes generators, and they have here the plants, 3 plants located in Cleveland, Bedford, and York. And they have distribution centers, 4 distribution centers here located in Boston, Chicago, St. Louis, and Lexington. So the plants are the places where the generators are manufactured, and then they are shipped over to the distribution centers to be distributed to the retail and contractors and so forth, like places like Home Depot. And so distribution centers from here, the generators will now go to places like Home Depot to be sold to the to the end consumers, the end customers. So this is kind of part of our supply chain. Before the plants, before the generators are manufactured, there's also maybe some other subcomponent, components, or the parts that are manufactured by some other other companies. So this is a whole, the part of kind of whole supply chain, one of the problems we deal with in supply chain is how to send things, in the most efficient way, in the most cost-efficient way, from one stage to another. How to send, do it at the cheapest, do it at the lowest cost, and then do it efficiently. And so move move goods from one place to another in the most efficient way. Here, what we're concerned with is how to ship these generators from these 3 plants to these 4 distribution centers in the most cost-effective way, at the lowest possible cost. Here our goal is going to be to minimize the total shipping cost of the generators, and this is a kind of your sort of basic transportation problem, where you're actually transporting the physical goods. But this kind of problem is applied in many situations, not just in transporting goods, but transporting people. There are a lot of examples of where people use transportation type of models to decide how to send people from one set of places to another set of places. In the book, there's an example how U.S. Marine Corps used a transportation kind of model to send personnel located in all these different places to the places that need them when something happens. When there's some crisis in some other part of the world, you got to send all these people very fast to deal with the problem. And they use a type of transportation model. It's also used for scheduling. It doesn't have to be actually transporting anything. It could be just kind of assigning, you might have these machines. You have these machines that could process these items, and then you might have these items that need to be processed, and you could kind of match them up. So you're not actually sending things, but you're just matching up your capacities to the work that you need to do. We are looking at this problem. And the first thing we want to do is we want to just play around with it a little bit to get a feel for what's going on. So first, let's define what all these numbers are. Here, these are the capacities. That is, how many units could be available. How many units will be available at these different plants for the next 3 months in the planning period. So during the next 3 months, here are the units that could be manufactured at these places, at these plants. Then we have here destinations with the specific demands. So demand means they need it. They need the stuff. So, well, how many do you need? Well, here are the numbers I need. At the Boston Distribution Center needs to have 6,000. Chicago needs to have 4,000, and so forth. Okay. Okay, we sometimes we call these sources or origins because that's where the stuff is coming from. And then the other distribution centers, we will call them destinations because that's where the stuff is headed to. Okay, and what are these little numbers? These are the unit costs. How much it costs to ship 1 unit. So, for instance, this 3 here is a dollar amount. So $3, it costs $3 to ship 1 generator from Cleveland to Boston. So there are different kinds of costs depending on the route. Maybe some places are farther apart, and then or there might be some different kind of shipping modes, and maybe you go by train from one place to another, and then maybe in another route, maybe you send the trucks. So there are different kinds of shipping modes. So the costs are different based on the route. Whether you go from Cleveland to Boston or Bedford to Boston, the costs are going to be different. Okay. So for instance, if I were to ship 1 unit from Cleveland to Boston, it's going to cost $3. If I were to ship 2 units, it'll cost 3 plus 3, 3 times 2, $6, and so forth. So you could think of these numbers as a sort of the coefficients for your objective function. Because here, basically, your objective is to minimize the total transportation cost. And does it say that somewhere? Okay, so it says minimize the total transportation cost. So the total transportation cost will be like your objective function in a linear programming model. And the unit costs that are given, the little numbers there, are going to be your objective coefficient. So eventually we're going to formulate this as a linear programming model and solve it using Excel solver. Okay, so first we're going to play around with it before we formulate the problem. Okay, so for instance, let's suppose, let's take a look at like Boston. Okay, just Boston. Okay, so let's say we are worried about satisfying this demand, 6,000. Say Boston needs to get 6,000. Boston needs to get 6,000. So if we're just worried about this and we're to ask, okay, from where should Boston receive the 6,000 to minimize the total cost of shipping the 6,000 to Boston, we will look at these 3 places, 3 plants, Cleveland, Bedford, and York, and then we will see how many they have, and then decide how many to send from each place to Boston. Okay, so we would say, okay, to ship 1 unit from Cleveland to Boston, it costs $3, and then to ship one from Bedford to Boston, it costs $7. From York to Boston, it costs $2. So we want to minimize the cost, so we would want to choose what out of the 3 routes? Out of 3 plants.
New York.
Right, New York, right. So from York, right, York. From York. So because it's $2, that's the cheapest cost. So we want to send stuff from York to Boston. So we would go over here and say, okay, let's send as much as we can from York to Boston. So we would say York to Boston. We're going to use that route. Now, can we get all 6,000 from York? No, there's only 2,500, so we could only send 2,500 from York to Boston. Okay, so that means Boston still needs to receive more. So York is not enough. We gotta go somewhere else to get more of the stuff. Okay, so then what? So this one, 2,500 this way. So 2,500 going this way. And then we gotta look at the other 2 choices, right? So out of these, which one has the cheapest cost? Cleveland, Bedford, Cleveland. So we're gonna take Cleveland. And now how many does Boston need?
3,500.
3,500, right? So 6,000 minus 2,500, so 3,500. 3,500, that's what Boston needs. And Cleveland, does it have 3,500? Oh yeah, that's 5,000, so no problem. So we would send 3,500 from Cleveland to Boston. So Cleveland to Boston, 3,500. Okay, and that would satisfy the demand at Boston. Okay, and how much would that cost? Well, 2,500 going this way, it costs $2 each, right? So $2 times 2,500. Then Cleveland to Boston costs $3 each. So it's 3 times 3,500. Okay, let's see, that's 5,000. And this is 10,500. So the total is, so if you add that, we get 15500. Right, so 15500, 15,500 will be the total. Okay. Any questions? So that would be the cheapest way, right, for the Boston to receive the 6,000 by using the cheapest route whenever we can. Okay. And we could do it not just for Boston, but for others too. And maybe we would go after with the Boston, maybe with the Chicago, St. Louis, Lexington, or we could do it kind of globally. Or we could say, we could look at all the routes and then just pick the cheapest route and not worry about which one should receive, which one we're working on. Just pick the cheapest route every time and send as much as we can through that route and then go to the next cheapest route and so forth until all the demands are satisfied at these 4 distribution centers. Okay, and that way is going to give us a pretty good solution, but it will not necessarily give us the best solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to now do this kind of thing by kind of heuristic, where we pick the cheapest route every time, send as much as we can on that route, and then we just keep repeating it until all the demands are satisfied. Okay, and that's going to give us a pretty good solution, but not necessarily optimal. So, and then the next thing would be to find the optimal solution by going to linear programming and going to solver. But by doing this kind of little heuristic will help us really develop what kind of issues are involved. So it will help us actually formulate the linear programming model. Okay, so and now out of all these, we're going to pick the lowest cost. The lowest cost. We got here 327675233. Okay, so it looks like 2 is the lowest shipping cost, right? 2, and there are more than 1 2. You got 2 2 2. So I just picked this first one, and then I say, okay, I want to ship as much as we can this way from Cleveland to Chicago. So Cleveland has 5,000, and Chicago needs 4,000, and don't send more than they need. So you just send 4,000. Okay, so here I'm going to send 4,000. Okay, 4,000. Okay, and then what? And that would mean, and I'm going to keep track of the remaining supply. So 5,000, we're sending 4,000, so the remaining supply is, what was it, 1,000, right? Okay, 1,000. 5,000 minus 4,000 is now 1,000. And here Chicago is receiving all of 4,000. And so now it's done. So remaining demand is 0. So Chicago is done. Okay, it's done. Okay. And then now we go to the next one, the 327. Okay. Now the Chicago is done. So that means Chicago doesn't need to receive more from the other places like Bedford or York. Chicago is receiving all it needs, so we're going to just delete the routes that are not going to be used. So Chicago doesn't need to receive more from Bedford or from York, so these routes are not going to be used. Okay. Okay. Now let's see. So we got 3 7 6 7 2 3 2 4 5. So here is the next one, 2. Okay, and then here we're going to say, well, Bedford has 6,000 and St. Louis needs 2,000. So let's send how many? Let's say 2,000, right? So let's send 2,000 this way. So that would mean St. Louis will be done. Okay, and then what about Bedford? 6,000 minus 2,000, and there will be still some left, 4,000 at Bedford. Okay, so that. And now what's done? St. Louis is done. St. Louis is receiving all it needs, so it doesn't it doesn't need to receive more from the other places. So this we're not going to use, and then the other one from York is not going to receive anything. So don't use those. Don't use those. Okay. Now what's next? We have 3, 6, 7, 2. So this one is still there too. This is the last two. So now we're going to work with this one from York to Boston, and we want to send how many? All right, so 2,500 there. So 2,500 going from York to Boston. So 6,000 minus 2,500, 3,500 remaining demand here. Then here we have nothing left. Okay, so York is done. York is done, and so York has exhausted its supply, so it's not going to send any more to anyone else. Not going to send any more to anyone else, so it's not going to send stuff to Lexington either. So I'm going to cross out this line. Okay, so that part is not going to be used. So no, and no, that's not going to be used. So we have here 2, 2, 2, and now what else? We have 3, right? This one is the out of the surviving routes out of the remaining routes. The first one has the cheapest cost. So we pick 3. So we pick 3 and say Cleveland has 1,000, and Boston needs 3,500. How many can we send? 1,000. So we're gonna send 1,000 this way. So now that's done. Cleveland is done, and Boston still needs more. 3,500 minus 1,000. Now it needs 2,500 more. Okay, so 3,500 minus 1,000 is 2,500. Okay, and now Cleveland is done. Cleveland is done. So this part is not going to be used. Okay, and so other stuff. So that and these are already done anyway. So 3, 2. Okay, and what else? There's a 7. This one is gone. Oh, is this one okay? Okay, like this other 3 here, that's still available, right? Okay, so we're gonna go with this one, 3. So Bedford to Lexington. How many should we send? Right, 1,500 here, 1,500 from Bedford to Lexington, 1,500 this way. Okay, so now that's going to be gone, that's going to be done. Okay, so this is not going to be used. Okay, well that was already gone anyway. So that's 1,500, and then what else here? And here we could update. 1,500, subtract that from 4,000, we have 2,500. Okay, and now what? Now we have 3, 2. So it looks like we have this one.
$7.
No, this is done. Oh, this one, right?
Yeah.
So this one is available, and it's Bedford to Boston, 25. Oh, well, it worked out well. The 2,500 Boston needs, and 2,400 Bedford has. Well, that's great. So we're going to send Bedford to Boston, 2,500. 2,500. Okay. Okay. So what we've done is we have routed. We have kind of loaded the routes with the amount to try to kind of try to favor the cheapest routes. Try to use as much as we can of the cheapest routes. Okay. And so let's see. What is this? The cost is going to be, let's see, 3 times 1,000. And then you got 2 times 4,000, and then 7 times 2,500, and let's see, 2 times 2,000, and 3 times 1,500, and 2 times 2,500, something like that. And so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's it. So the total cost will be all this. And if you add up all these, that would be the total cost. That would be the total cost, and that is calculated on the next. Okay, so here are the unit costs that were used, and here are the shipment amounts multiplied together, and then add them up, you get 42,000. So